you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Living the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And in today's episode, we're going to be continuing our discussion from last week's masterclass episode on tips, tricks, and strategies to aid in the healing process of sore muscles. If you haven't listened to part 1, definitely go back and listen to that one first, because we touched on the huge rocks of recovery and where you're going to find the most success. This episode, it's going to focus on some other ways that I myself use to recover and that the research has shown to assist us in recovering from our training. It's important to note, as we've said many times in the past, it's in the recovery where we rebuild from the positive stress and the positive damage that was done to our bodies from a hard training session. So the more that we can prioritize these recovery methods into our routines, the more the importance that we can put on recovery, and the more consistent that we can be with our recovery, the more we set ourselves up for success to attaining our health and fitness goals. But before we get into the topic of the day, I want to start by thanking the sponsors of this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by a new sponsor. It's my favorite group fitness studio, Eat the Frog Fitness. Eat the Frog Fitness is the most personalized group fitness experience that you're ever going to find. All Frog Squad members are assessed every 8 weeks to see and to track their progress. The programming is backed by science-based periodization, which means that the sessions are designed to progress your intensity over time, as well as have programmed in recovery weeks. Check out Eat the Frog Fitness, and if you mention the Living the Dream podcast, you'll receive your first 2 training sessions complimentary. So let the front desk know about the Living the Dream podcast, and they will give you your first 2 training sessions complimentary. Another one of our sponsors is Dirt Food, healing and delicious superfoods made by hand and made with love. Dirt Food was created by a local San Diego friend of mine, Nika Blunt, as she was going through her battles with cancer. She discovered and created all of these superfoods and put them together into a delicious granola that she makes by hand in her kitchen. Visit eatdirtfood.com and use the discount code DirtyDamien for 10% off. That's DIRTYDAMIEN for 10% off your entire order. I eat it every single day as a snack, and I get it auto-shipped to my door on a monthly subscription. So eatdirtfood.com, DirtyDamien discount code. And this week's 5-star review comes from Michael Moyer 32. Michael Moyer 32 says, Coach Damian provides so much insight on health and happiness. Highly recommend. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you. That's one of my good friends. Much love to you, friend. I appreciate the love and the support and the shout out. If the rest of you and you're listening to this and you haven't left a review yet, do us a favor while you're listening to this episode. If you haven't subscribed, please take a second to subscribe to this podcast, which is going to allow you to not only get notifications anytime that I post an episode, but also it's going to let other people know that this podcast is worth a listen to them. You can scroll all the way down and leave me a 5-star review if you feel that I've earned it. I read every single one, and I really appreciate and love the feedback. And now on to the topic of the day. All right, team. So last week's masterclass episode, we talked about prevention strategies to getting sore, how sleep is so important to our recovery. We discussed massage tools like foam rollers and massage guns and compression boots. And we also discussed how moving your sore muscles were once believed to be detrimental to the healing process, but how that was completely wrong, and how active recovery movement could be one of the most impactful things you could do to help accelerate the healing process. Today, we're going to go and continue on from last week's episode and start by discussing strategies that were believed to be true and that may not quite be as important as we thought they were. Then we're going to dive into what I personally do for my recovery, and we're going to finish off with some unconventional strategies that you may have never even heard of or thought about. Let's start off with the strategy that we all believe to help with muscle soreness, and that is stretching. 2 main types of stretching, static stretching and dynamic stretching. Now, static stretching, that is long holds of a stretch For example, a seated hamstring stretch where you're sitting on the ground with your legs out in front of you and you reach for your toes. Or a quad stretch where you're standing and you grab a foot and you stretch the front of your thighs. Whereas dynamic stretching is moving through a large or full range of motion to stretch a muscle. Examples of dynamic stretching would be like arm swings or leg swings, those Frankenstein walks, or anything that you've probably done at the beginning of an outdoor boot camp workout. It is now being researched and studied that long hold static stretching doesn't really help with muscle soreness recovery. That's not to say that it's useless. No, it's actually extremely beneficial in other ways. So don't just write off stretching just yet. Long hold static stretching is great for increasing flexibility, for helping alleviate muscular tension that builds over time, but not really proven to help with muscle soreness recovery. However, even through static stretching after the workout hasn't been found to help with muscle soreness, dynamic stretching before a workout is being looked at to not only aid in performance during your physical activity, but also dynamic stretching is being shown subjectively, of course, in individuals in specific studies when asked that it in fact did seem to help prevent muscle soreness. So subjectively, these participants were asked if they felt less sore after doing dynamic stretching before their workouts. And it seems to, from these people, in fact, help prevent a little bit of muscle soreness. Now, yin yoga, Y-I-N, yin yoga is a style of yoga where you hold a stretch for 3 to 5 minutes. Now, for me, yin yoga at night has been a game changer to help modulate my pain that I frequently feel at night when I stop moving from my busy day. But I'm still in the process of figuring out the exact mechanism here and why it does help me so much. But here's some information about static stretching and its effects on DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. DOMS, that big soreness feeling that you feel a day or usually 2 days after a training session. DOMS is classified as a type 1 muscle strain. So yes, damage has been done to the muscle. And it happens as a result of unaccustomed training stimuli and is intensified usually from eccentric training or the slow lowering phase efforts. I know that's a big word. Eccentric training just means the slow lowering phase of each physical effort when you do an exercise. The slower you lower the weight, the more muscular damage usually occurs to the muscle. There's a big individual variability here. For some people, it's extremely easy to get DOMS, while they experience little to no soreness at all. DOMS becomes noticeable around 8 hours after training, and it usually gets intensified or it hits its peak around 24 to 72 hours later. It usually is completely gone after about 5 or 6 days or so, depending on your recovery protocols and depending on how often you train. Now, if you search on the internet, you're going to find millions of videos about stretching for recovery. Go on YouTube right now, and there's going to be an endless amount of pages of videos for you to watch to guide you through certain stretching routines. However, if you look at the scientific research-backed studies, there's actually zero evidence that stretching can help alleviate the symptoms and pain that comes along with DOMS. So there's no studies. We kind of have to go with how we feel here. Now, there were 3 reviews done by the same scientist, and his name was Rob D. Herbert. He published these papers in 2002, 2007, and 2011. Essentially, they were just updated versions of themselves. So 2002, 2007, 2011, he kept updating this research. And he looked at a ton of different studies along those years having to do with stretching and soreness. I'll make sure that I link these studies in the show notes of the masterclass episode here if you want to check them out a little more in depth. But what he was very clear about in these papers is that while soreness is an important symptom of muscle damage that might present a barrier that hinders you and your future training, it's also important to note that reduction in soreness, it correlates really poorly with the return of muscle strength, which he reported to be the best marker of recovery for muscular damage. So to say that in another way, just because you feel less sore doesn't mean that that muscle has repaired itself fully. So this is where we really have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves here, why do we want to be less sore? Is it for comfort reasons, which is totally understandable? That's my main reason why I want to be less sore. I don't want to walk around with a limp the whole day. Or is it because we want to know when we can train that muscle again to avoid hitting it too soon and doing more harm than good. That's also a great reason to want to be less sore. So when we're searching for techniques that can reduce our soreness, we are searching for two different things. These two things are connected in a certain way, but they're not directly correlated. We're looking for one, reduction in pain, which is subjective. You got to measure that most of the time using visual analog scales, where many researchers are just going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your soreness level? And then you have to subjectively throw out a number that you feel represents your soreness level. So number one, reductions in pain. And then the second way we can measure reduction in soreness is what they call hematological parameters. What does that mean? Well, if you know the root word hemo, that just means blood. So that means that they look at the markers in the blood to detect the level of muscular damage. So they can actually see physiologically what's going on. For those of you wondering, not that we need to know this, they measure what's called the plasma creatine kinase in your blood, and then also the myoglobin concentration in the blood. This can tell us what's going on with the repair process as we heal from our training session. So they can see those two markers go up or down, and they can tell how much you are recovered or not. So when we look at the most recent review done by Dr. Herbert in 2011, he looks at static stretching to see what stretching does to those two parameters, both subjective reduction in soreness and pain and the markers of those two markers in your blood. He came to the conclusion after dissecting 12 randomized controlled studies, and this is a quote from his work, quote, "The evidence from randomized studies suggests that muscle stretching, whether conducted before, after, or both before and after exercise, does not produce clinically important reductions in delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, in healthy adults." So these findings are important, but there's some problems with them. Check it out. After reading the study methods, I saw some things. The type of stretching that they did was called short period single bout stretching. So what they did was they stretched 6 different lower body parts, muscles for only 20 seconds each. So what that would look like is if they stretched like their quads, their hamstrings, their calves, they did a couple of shoulder stretches as well. The total time of stretching was 240 seconds, so a total of 4 minutes. This is a huge limitation right here. Of course, stretching on 6 different muscles for 4 minutes total, is this really going to change much? Your body is a strong and resilient machine. If you could change your soft tissues that easily, I think we'd be in a world of hurt. We'd be in a lot more injuries a lot more often. So I dug a little deeper and I looked into prolonged stretching, stretches that were held for much longer, because that's what I like to do at the end of the day. I like to stretch a certain muscle for 3 to 5 minutes, and that's doing yin yoga holds. And of course, I do breath work in there as well. So while there are contradicting results when it comes to single bout stretching, that shorter version, which would be going into the workout and doing a quick stretch afterwards or before, and not stretching at all after that, they found not very beneficial results with that. On the other hand, when it came down to prolonged bouts of stretching, meaning a much more consistent stretch routine that you have in your weekly routine with longer stretch holds, they found with this type of stretching, along with making you overall more flexible and reducing your risk of injuries, this type of stretching was actually shown to help aid in soreness and reducing DOMS. It's important to note that there were only 2 studies that I could find on prolonged stretching done in the past few years. So I do think more research needs to be done in this area to really understand what's going on. So does this mean that if you do yin yoga stretching or you consistently stretch that you'll never get sore? No, of course not. Getting DOMS has to do with many different variables. Your intensity of training, the novelty or newness of your training. Obviously, your genetics and your nutrition are going to have a huge factor, and then your sleep and a lot more. So if you're looking to reduce your soreness, yes, some of that long duration stretching can have benefits, but you should really be looking into your nutrition and your lifestyle and make sure it's balanced and you're not going 100 miles per hour all the time. You should look at your training volume. Is it just too many reps and too many sets at this point in time for you? You should also look at your frequency. Are you hitting that muscle super hard and then resting it for a week? Or are you hitting it way too often and doing that muscle every single day? Or are you training a muscle group and then actively recovering with trigger sessions that we talked about. The last one is how I approach minimizing soreness. I train a muscle group and then I actively recover that muscle group with nice, easy, high rep, low weight trigger sessions, keeping the blood flow to that muscle group. With that being said, I would not use stretching for the specific purpose of reducing soreness. Instead, I would use stretching as a way to sustain and increase your flexibility and your mobility through full ranges of motion, which are going to help you in the future be less sore and avoid injuries better. So it's like putting money in the bank. You're not doing it for the current training session that you did. You're just making yourself an overall more resilient with your soft tissues. Practical takeaways are to maintain a flexibility session at the end of your training sessions when you're already warm. So do it after you're warm to sustain or increase your personal flexibility. This way, you're getting the advantage of increasing your flexibility, and in terms of post-workout stretching, it will help post-workout recovery and reap the benefits of stretching without taking the risks that come with static stretching before your training. So do it afterwards, not for the short term, but for the long term. So think of stretching more like investing in the future rather than having impactful immediate benefits. Okay, moving on, stretching. I want to talk next about a really fun subject that is exploding in popularity in recent years, but have actually been used for a really long time for a myriad of health benefits, and as well by athletes all around the world. And that's ice baths. Ice baths and cryotherapy treatment. For this particular episode, we're going to really focus on how ice baths and cryotherapy, what they do for soreness and soreness individually. Although I think that they have much more important benefits when it comes to the other aspects of health, like immune function and increasing your overall resiliency. So ice baths, yes, if you've ever done them, you know that exact feeling of fear before you enter that calm, ice-filled water. You know how much discomfort you're about to be in before you put that first little dip of your toe in. You know how much mental strength it is going to take to get you to put your entire body up to your neck into this freezing, torturous abyss. But then you also know on the other side of that pain, on the other side of this experience, is a feeling of euphoria that you won't receive from many other things in this world. If you ever were, or if you currently are, an advanced athlete, then you probably know what it feels like to finish a brutal training practice session and then limp your way into the athletic trainer's office and get undressed down to your underwear. You put those little gloves on and those little socks on so that your fingers and your toes don't freeze off when you jump into this ice bath. But do we even know why we're getting in this tub? What are we doing it for? And is it benefiting the things that we really want it to? Well, that's what I set out to research for this episode. Today, in the health and fitness space, taking ice baths are exploding in popularity. But some people are doing it thinking that it's helping with one thing, but what we're finding out is that it may be detrimental to some form of your training and beneficial to other aspects of health that you really didn't even realize. Ice and cold are amazing at modulating pain. They're great at getting you to feel less pain. So for those athletes that have to train daily doubles, it makes a lot of sense that they would have their morning practice, hit the ice bath to help modulate pain and inflammation so that they can be ready to go for their night shift practice. Without the benefits of cold and ice, they could possibly wind up creating so much inflammation and buildup in their body that chronic overuse injuries are going to almost certainly occur. But that's the athlete that does daily doubles. What about just the weekend warrior or the person who works out 3 days a week for overall general health who wants to be just a little less sore? So they go out and they purchase this $300 cryotherapy membership and they use it. They hit it probably maybe a couple times a week. Is that really having the effects that they want? Well, in my opinion, with almost everything, of course, it depends. Does it add value to this person's life? Do they really enjoy it and look forward to it? Do they subjectively feel better after getting frozen alive for 3 minutes? Well, then perhaps it's worth it to that person. But we got to dive into the science here. I have linked 3 studies in the show notes of this masterclass episode that you can reference if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper into what we're about to cover. Now, Dr. Andy Galpin is one of my favorite fitness professionals to follow. He has a ton of content on the internet regarding all things muscle physiology. He's like the muscle physiology guy. He's an awesome Instagram follow as well. And if you follow him on YouTube, his channel is essentially a free college degree if you watch all of his videos, and it's for free. I highly recommend, if you're a physiology nerd like me, follow Dr. Andy, A-N-D-Y, Galpin, G-A-L-P-I-N, and you will not be disappointed. Dr. Galpin said that if you're looking for results with an ice bath, it's always about context. If you do a hard lift and your goal of lifting is to increase your muscle mass or to tone your muscles, and you jump into an ice bath after your training session to help with your soreness, well, guess what? Not only are you not getting the benefits that you're looking for when it comes to that muscle gain or that muscle tone, you're actually going to be going in the wrong direction. So here's what I mean. Ice baths and cryotherapy, they actually dampen the signal of muscle growth post-resistance training. So when you resistance train, you're sending this signal and you're releasing these hormones that say build, build, build. And ladies, just when I say build, it's toning the muscles. You're not going to get huge, bulky muscles. It's toning and getting your muscle mass. So essentially, you're dampening that signal when you go into this ice bath or when you take an anti-inflammatory. So essentially, you're zeroing out your hard work in the gym. Now, having said that, there are some studies that suggest that it does enhance the metabolic process. So what that means is that if your goal is to burn a few more calories that day, then cold therapies could offer a small boost towards attaining that goal. And going back to those studies that I have referenced, all of them found no significant decrease in short-term cold water immersion use on the level of soreness experienced in study participants. So no significant decrease in the level of soreness experienced in study participants that jumped in cold water. However, all my ice bath junkies and cryotherapy lovers, please don't yell at me just yet. I actually love cryotherapy. I love the feeling after I get out. This is strictly referring to muscle adaptation and growth, as well as subjective muscle soreness. What it doesn't touch on is it's going into the topics of blood markers, cardiovascular benefits, immunity and resiliency. Think about the energy that you get after these things, or the psychological and mood boosting benefits. How you actually feel. It doesn't measure any of those things. I personally believe, and the science backs this up, that cold water ice baths and cryotherapy have a ton of benefits when it comes to those categories. However, if we go back to when I had a sprained ankle and we wanted to do only rest, ice, compress, and elevate, the old RICE protocol, rest, ice, compress, elevate. That's what all athletic trainers were taught. That's what all athletes knew to do after they got an ankle sprain. It seems that the only real benefit of the ice is to blunt the sensation of pain, but at a cost of prolonging the healing process. So you just have to ask yourself, why are you doing ice baths in the first place? Is it for all those amazing benefits that we talked about in masterclass episode number 7, the 5 unconventional practices to help you live longer, which I do think cold therapy has its place? We talked about cold therapy and heat therapy, and it was a good thing, or are you doing this to help heal your muscle soreness? The science says save your money and save the agonizing experience of these brutal few minutes of extreme cold if your goal is to strictly help with you be less sore from a training session. Not only will you not be less sore, but you will also slow down your healing process, along with reducing the anabolic muscle building signals that are so important for you to keep building your toned, precious muscle tissue. Think about why you're training. Think about the volume of your training. If you're a runner and you run 7 days a week at a really high mileage, then maybe investing in some anti-inflammatory treatment such as cryotherapy a couple times a week, that can help you stay healthy and moving. That doesn't have to do with soreness though. That has to do with modulating the amount of stress that your body goes through at such a high workload. Or if you're just someone that is starting out your workout journey and you know you're going to be super sore, go ahead and leave the bag of peas in the freezer before you put it on your shaky thighs after a ton of squats in a group fitness session. You probably won't do anything except make your peas warm. Instead, get outside and go for a nice relaxing walk. to get the blood flow to those muscle groups, as well as the other benefits that moving post-exercise has to offer. So for you people that are just brand new to fitness and you want to be a little less sore, save the cold, get moving just a little bit more. Active recovery is what we're looking for. All right, so cold is a no-go for muscle soreness, but what about the other end of the spectrum? Epsom salt baths. That's right, we've all heard of them. And while baths are a little bit taboo when it comes to masculinity nowadays, I'm not sure why, I absolutely love hot water relaxation therapy, especially if I got some jets in there that help massage. Oh yeah. So let's take a look at the science behind Epsom salt baths and if they work or not. So Epsom salt bath has been believed to help with soreness, and it's been believed that forever. It's important to note that Epsom salt is not actually a salt at all. It's magnesium sulfate. And if you remember from our previous episode, magnesium deficiencies in adults is far more common than it's not. So that's a plus right there. If the Epsom salt is getting absorbed through our skin and into our bloodstream, like a lot of us believe, then that's going to probably help us with our magnesium deficiency, right? But does it get into our body and replenish our depleted magnesium stores? Well, there was a study done in vitro, and that means in a petri dish. So not a human or a live trial, but in vitro. It was done in a lab. So take that with a grain of salt. Get it? Okay, moving on. Just because it was done in a lab doesn't mean that we can't get some things from these types of studies. What they found is that the ions and particles similar to magnesium, they found that these ions can pass through skin cells. So that was the first part of the test, which is looking pretty good for us to be able to absorb magnesium through the skin. Now, the next part of their study was to see if magnesium levels could be absorbed into the blood after taking an Epsom salt bath. Now, there actually was a study that did look at just this. But one thing that was not very bueno about this particular study is that it was a private study. It wasn't peer-reviewed, and it didn't have a control group. So those are pretty big strikes when it comes to studies, if you want my opinion. But so don't put your faith in this 100% in this study, but it is interesting. What did they find? At the University of Birmingham, with 19 participants that took Epsom salt baths for a week, they looked at what their serum levels of magnesium were after that week. Well, all but 2 of the participants showed elevated magnesium serum levels. And the 2 that didn't show, well, they actually showed elevated levels of magnesium in their urine, meaning maybe it got into the body, but it got excreted out rather than absorbed. And just because magnesium serum levels are elevated, that doesn't really necessarily mean that the body is utilizing it in the way that we want it to. So really the takeaway message from these studies for me is that the only way we know for sure, at least right now, if the body is utilizing magnesium is if we focus on getting it from whole natural foods in our diet. So foods like avocados, broccoli, dark leafy greens, or even magnesium supplements that have been proven to get into our system orally. However, for me, Epsom salt is extremely cheap. You can buy a huge box of 2 large bags at Costco for like under $10. So my theory is if you do great with your diet and if it feels good, even if it's placebo, go ahead and take your Epsom salt baths. We don't know for sure if it works, but take it. Make sure that it's not your only way to try to get magnesium into your body, but hey, it couldn't hurt. Even if the Epsom salt baths only way to help is because you're in warm water, it still matters to me. And personally, my favorite way to recover from a workout is to sit in a hot tub with the massage jets while listening to nice, easy, relaxing music or meditation binary beats from the app brain.fm. If you haven't checked out brain.fm, the app on, I think you can get it on Apple and Droid. It's awesome. I usually sit in the hot tub for 3 rounds of 12 minutes on, and then I go into the cold pool for 1 to 3 minutes cold. So 3 rounds, I spend 12 or 15 minutes in the hot tub, and then it's usually when the jets go off, that's kind of like my cue. I jump into the cold pool, and I do that little contrast training for 3 rounds. Nothing makes me more relaxed and helps aid in my recovery better than that hot-cold strategy. Now, that's like an hour, and that's a super long time to dedicate to your recovery protocol. So don't feel like you have to do that. I don't expect anyone else to do that. I'm just telling you that's what works for me and that's what works for my schedule. Also, for me, hot water therapy, especially with massage and calming tunes, is definitely my top 3 favorite way to recover from muscle soreness. So try it out if you have that opportunity or if you have access to those things. You can also check out magnesium topical spray from Ease, E-A-Z-E. If you go to ease.com and check out the magnesium topical spray, I found that it's pretty good stuff. I sometimes use this on topical rubs on sore muscles after training, or like icy hot or mineral ice. But these kind of topical applications or gels, they're more for relief then and there and not really for actual long-term benefits. So if they work for you and you don't mind spending like 20 bucks a tube, then go for it. Sometimes that here and now relief can really calm down your neuromuscular tension enough to stop it from getting any worse and to stop you from really like focusing on it and kind of amplifying that signal. If it works for you, I say do it. I couldn't find anything to say that these topical rubs, the magnesiums, the icy hots, the minerals, I couldn't find anything to say that they work scientifically really, but I also couldn't find anything that said they were harmful. So if they work for you and you like it and you like that feeling of here and now, those are also good ways to recover. So let's conclude this episode with some unconventional ways of recovery. One strategy for helping with aches and pains that I'm really diving into recently is infrared heat. In masterclass episode number 7, 5 unconventional practices to help you live longer, we discussed a lot of the benefits of infrared lighting. But interestingly enough, the heat generated from that and the fact that infrared lighting can penetrate into our soft tissue so deep makes it a very curious strategy for alleviating pain. The reason it's very interesting to me is because I love hot water therapy and I love heat therapy. I think it works amazing for me in my recovery. However, the heat strategies that I currently use, or if we were to use maybe like a heating blanket, they've researched how deeply that heat can penetrate into the body. And what they found is that with those standard modalities such as hot tub or heating blanket or maybe one of those microwavable hot packs that people have, those penetrate the skin about 1/4 of an inch deep. Now, 1/4 of an inch is not bad, right? But 1/4 of an inch probably hits through the layers of the skin and maybe touches some of the muscle depending on how much body fat you have. What's incredible is that they've measured the amount of penetration of infrared and near infrared lighting, and they found that it can penetrate the body up to almost 2.5 inches deep, from 1/4 of an inch to 2.5 inches deep. That's a huge difference. That's 10 times deeper. So if you're experiencing pain or arthritis of the joints, let's say it's in your lower back, your lumbar spine, or maybe you're trying to get deep heat into the shoulder joints or the knee joints to help with pain, well, those other modalities may only be touching the surface of where you want to go. And infrared light is able to travel so much deeper, allowing the heat to get into the body where you may need it most. Super interesting, right? Now, this is a brand new science that is just now really catching some momentum and being studied more. So I highly recommend that you do your own research and that you make sure you're not getting duped by the fake or cheap products. The infrared system that I use is from a company called Joovv, Joovv. Now, Joovv, Joovv, is a fairly expensive product. I had to save up for literally a couple years to be able to buy mine. However, I use it every single day. In fact, I actually sit down and I do these podcasts for an hour every day in front of this Joovv lighting panel. It was the best quality product that I could find. And I think if you're going to be investing in this type of thing, you should really go top of the line here. Don't just go onto Amazon and don't buy the cheapest little wand thingy that you see first thing on the page. I promise you it won't work, and I promise you that you're going to be disappointed. Yes, this is coming from firsthand experience. Yes, I've gotten suckered many times, so learn from my mistakes. I've also included a YouTube video of a really super cool product from Thermotex. Theromo, Thermo, Tex, all one word. It's a blanket looking product that you can actually strap onto parts of your body that sends infrared lighting straight into your skin. You can even buy one that straps to your back to help with your posture while you're working at your work desk. And then it also sends that heat through your back to help keep that area and blood flow and circulation to the areas that you want it to. I thought that was really cool. Now, I haven't used it, but if I had a desk job, I would certainly check it out and I would see if it was something that could be useful for me. I'll include the video in the show notes of this masterclass episode. So if you want to check that out, we'll have the links to the products that I'm talking about here in that YouTube video. If you want to check out Joovv and think it might be something that you want to invest in, the website is joovv.com. And I believe I can find you a discount code, although they don't really offer a percentage off because it is kind of a higher priced product. So if they offered a percent off, you get like a ton money off. But they do offer things like free shipping or free products with the purchase, which is still better than nothing. So I think if you're wanting to get something like that, just let me know and I can get you a discount code from one of the fitness professionals that I follow. One more thing about infrared lighting is that it's picking up in popularity is the infrared saunas. Infrared saunas can get much hotter than regular saunas, and I personally can stay in infrared saunas a little bit longer than the ones that let's say are at 24-hour fitness. You have to be careful though. If the infrared sauna doesn't have the infrared light that has the right wavelength or the intensity of light, it could be more of a gimmick than perform the way that you want it to. Personally, I think my next big purchase is going to be an infrared sauna. I want to be able to do one that I can do my trigger sessions in, as well as do some deep stretching in. So I think that's going to be down the road because that's going to need a lot of space in that sauna to do that kind of stuff. And I have to have a place that I can live that it makes sense to hold that type of structure. But anyway, check out infrared lighting for your unconventional ways to help alleviate your soreness. It's new. It's still being studied. It's expensive. So I definitely don't think it should be your main way to help modulate your aches and pains and soreness, but could be something that you want to check out. Another unconventional strategy to help alleviate pains and muscle tension that is similar to those massage tools that we talked about in last week's masterclass episode, part 1 of sore muscles, is the vibration and force plates. Now, these are rare and these are very, very expensive unless you get like a at-home version. But there's a really cool place here in San Diego called OsteoStrong. They have a few of these there. And then also, I think a lot of the recreation centers on college campuses have them. They're hard to find, but you can purchase at-home small versions that could quite possibly offer some of the same benefits for us in the average population. The way that they work is that they were designed as exercise machines. They're stood on by individuals and they deliver this low amplitude but high frequency vibration up through the entire body. These platforms have been used to treat osteoporosis, increase bone mass, and they've been used by professional athletes to increase muscle mass as well. Now, when I was a trainer at Oregon State University, I would actually use these vibration plates all the time. It was an added balance and stabilization challenge to bodyweight exercises like squats or iso lunge holds, plank holds. You could even do your feet on it and decline push-ups, or you could just do iso squat holds. And these things would vibrate and they would hit all of your stabilizer muscles. It would take an easy iso squat hold and it would make it so challenging. Think of like a wall sit, but while you're being like shaken just on this micro level. I would also train elderly clients on these machines to help improve their balance. I had no idea that they could also help relieve some of the muscle tension that happens in the same way that these massage guns could help minimize the central nervous system signals that are being sent to those muscles. I highly recommend you have, if you have one of these in your areas, checking out OsteoStrong, O-S-T-E-O, strong, all one word. If this is something that interests you. Yes, another expensive modality, I know. Yes, another modality that is still being researched, but it's really cool. And OsteoStrong also has these other machines that help people work on their bone density issues. So if you're worried about your bone density, OsteoStrong has got these really cool machines that you could do like 1 or 2 reps of this slow exercise, and it'll show you your force output and it'll measure your performance and it'll track your progress. I thought OsteoStrong's program was really cool. I'll include the website and the Instagram pages in the links of the show notes of this masterclass episode. I want to finish my favorite unconventional strategy here with soreness and muscle pains is, while it may be unconventional to us here in this crazy fast-paced world, but this strategy might actually be one of the oldest practices known to man. What could that be? Some cultures still use it today, especially in Eastern medicine or in the yoga realm or with Buddhist monks. Do you know what I'm talking about yet? Breath work. Breath work. This is one of my favorite topics right now. And I, for sure, am in no way an expert when it comes to the breath. I've been studying and practicing this for a little over a year now, and it has been eye-opening. This is me, an athlete, a muscle-bound jock that, kind of was foo-foo about that kind of stuff back in the day. But I love it now. I think it is crazy the benefits that it can have. I'm only going to touch on it here because it deserves its own masterclass. And if anyone is listening to this and is an expert in breath work, please, please, please come talk with me. I would love for you to share your knowledge with the Live in the Dream team because I know just how powerful and impactful it can be on our health. I'm going to touch on how personally I use breath work during deep stretching to help muscles let go and relax. And I'm also going to include 3 people to follow for breath work who have made their careers on teaching people about breath. And you can dive in as deep as you want to go with that information. So as I talk about this, I want you to think about what muscles are sore. And then if you could go into a stretch that would stretch that muscle, what that would look like. So I'm going to use my upper back. And the best way that I stretch out my upper back is to actually do a forward fold stretch. Most people consider this a hamstring stretch, but if you sit down with your legs extended in front of you and you try to fold forward as much as you can, not only are you going to be stretching your hamstrings, you're going to be stretching your entire backside from your heels to your knees to your butt, all the way up from your low back to the base of your skull. This is also one of the best deep stretches that you can do at night to help with your quality of sleep. Okay, so for me, a deep stretch is held for at least 3 to 5 minutes. The first 30 to 60 seconds is just finding how deep into this stretch we want to go. You want to go until you feel a point of tension, but you never want to go to a point where you feel pain or you have to hold your breath because you're in that stretch so deep. If you feel pain, your muscles and your brain are going to hold on tight. They're just going to hold on and they're never going to relax. So there's definitely an art here on what it takes to explore and find what that point is for you. So once you've found that point of tension where you think that, okay, this is a nice stretch, but it's not too much, the next minute is all about finding stillness. It's really easy to fidget and twitch and try to move around while you're in this uncomfortable stretch. Like, I get it. This muscle is being stretched and it's bothering you, but you got to find stillness. And this is where the mind and the breath comes in. So I use a breath count that is 4 counts in, 2 counts of a pause at the top of that breath in, and then 6 to 8 counts out. So 4 counts in, 2 count pause, 6 to 8 counts slowly letting the air out. Not exhaling, but just letting the air come out by itself. And I repeat that until the stretch is over, 3 to 5 minutes. The last 60 seconds can be a bit uncomfortable here, but it also can be an opportunity for you to tap into a part of yourself that you may not even know anything about. It tells yourself a lot about yourself, how you act in the last 60 seconds of a long, deep hold stretch. And I don't know if I can really explain it right now, but if you do it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. The last minute is all about letting time just do its thing. Set a timer and don't come out of that stretch until you hear that timer. Now, if we talk about why I chose the 4-2-8 breath count, the reason is, if I can simplify it down for the sake of this episode, when you breathe in longer and more often than you breathe out, you're actually stimulating your sympathetic fight or flight response. When you breathe in longer and more often than you breathe out, that's sympathetic. That's fight or flight. So think hyperventilating here. Mr. Wim Hof, the Iceman, has a really good way of teaching this breathing strategy that utilizes a form of this type of breath. However, if we're trying to relax, we really want to be able to flip that on its head. We want to go into the parasympathetic state. We want the parasympathetic state turned on. Rest, repair, digest, calm, chill, relax. And the best way to do that with your breath is to make your exhales longer and more extended and deeper than your inhales. So try this right now. You could do it anywhere, even if you're driving. If you're not driving, go ahead and close your eyes. Follow me. With your lips sealed through your nose, we're going to breathe deep from your belly through in your diaphragm and do this like you're doing a Darth Vader breath with your mouth closed. So a Darth Vader deep breath to the diaphragm. Let's take a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 1, 2. Slowly let the air out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, how do you feel? Nice, right? Now, when you do this breath and you're in a stretch, you're actually going to feel that muscle letting go. You're going to literally feel yourself getting deeper into that stretch as you exhale. If we go back to that forward fold stretch that I talk about that helps me a lot with my upper back stress, you'll notice that your body is getting considerably closer to your legs. By the end of that 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to notice that maybe you started at like a 45-degree angle, you're now down to like a 15-degree angle. Now, did you just stretch that muscle, that actual muscle? Did it get stretched in 3 to 5 minutes? Did you literally make those muscle fibers longer? Well, I mean, maybe, but my guess is no way. If it was that easy to stretch those muscles, it's my opinion we would be a lot more fragile than we are. What we did, though, was we told your mind to muscle connection that everything's okay. You're safe. It's time to let go. It's time to relax. Dude, it's so weird. It gives me like chills thinking about how powerful that is. The breath is powerful. If you control your breath, I truly believe that you can control every aspect of your life. In life, you're going to encounter really agitating and stressful situations. But these are just stimulus. And between every stimulus and response, there's a choice of how you respond to that stimulus. And being able to use your breath to slow down, make the right choice, that could be a life-changing hack that is attainable for every single one of us. Really, really cool. If you want to dive deeper into the world of breath, definitely check out Wim Hof, WIM space HOF. I already referenced him. He holds more world records in cold-related breathwork events than you can imagine. He hiked to the summit of Everest in just his shorts. What? He fought off an E. coli injection that should make him extremely ill just by breathing techniques. That is insane. So Wim Hof, he's famous for his Wim Hof method, which he actually is just a form of Tumo breathing that he repopularized. But also you can follow the next breath expert, author James Nestor. Check out the bestseller book that he titled Breath. You're going to be blown away after you read this book. You're never going to breathe another day in your life without thinking about the strategies that can help everything from health, sleep, cardiovascular health, even the structure of your skull and your mouth are affected by your breath. So Breath by James Nestor, and Nestor is spelled Nestor. And the last guy I follow is a little bit more hardcore. I'm not going to lie. He's like this Navy SEAL, tatted up dude. He's a really intense guy. But he's been talking for breath for, I don't know, like for physical performance stuff for at least a decade now, I feel like. His name is Brian McKenzie. Follow him on Instagram, and I believe he also is all over the podcast world as well. I'm going to include all of these guys' info in the show notes of this episode. Brian McKenzie is BRIAN, and McKenzie is spelled MACKENZIE. And that's the most I'm really going to talk about breath for now, because it's literally my favorite thing in the world to study at this point in time. I just love it. I believe it's going to be the next huge health craze here in the near future. But let's get back on track and let's close this episode on sore muscles, tips, tricks, and strategies to alleviate soreness. I just want to offer you a list of antioxidant-rich, anti-inflammatory foods. These foods are going to be what we can take orally, we can actually put in our bodies to help our body do what it was meant to do and heal itself properly from the inside out. I think that nutrition is probably one of the best ways that we can attack this. So here's some foods. Take out your shopping list right now and write these down. The top 10 foods that are high in antioxidants and can help alleviate inflammation and soreness. Number 1, cherries. Rich in antioxidants with anti-inflammatory effects that help sore muscles. Cherries. Number 2, nuts. Provide essential omega-3 fatty acids to fight inflammation. They have protein, fat, and they help muscle creation and growth. Nuts. Number 3, turmeric. full of inflammation-fighting antioxidants such as curcumin to help relieve soreness, turmeric. Number 4, spinach. Spinach packed with magnesium, which helps maintain normal muscle and nerve function, spinach. Number 5, sweet potato. Great source of beta-carotene and vitamin C to keep your body healthy and strong, sweet potato. Number 6, pomegranate. Anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties help relieve and help reduce exercise-induced muscular damage, pomegranate. Number 7, blueberries. The antioxidants in blueberries help fight off muscle fatigue, blueberries. Number 8, ginger. Contains gingerols, a powerful anti-inflammatory property known to reduce swelling and pain. Number 9, watermelon. Watermelon contains L-citrulline, an amino acid known to reduce muscle soreness. And number 10, honey. Honey, potent anti-inflammatory that helps suppress exercise-induced inflammation in the body. Honey. And if you haven't seen beekeepersnaturals.com, they have the highest quality honey and honey products and bee products that you'll find. beekeepersnaturals.com. Let me know if you want to buy something from them. I'll give you a discount code. I don't have one with me right now. You could even make a soreness recovery smoothie with all of these ingredients and just have an on-the-go recovery drink. That's kind of cool. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think and let me know if you feel the difference. So friends, muscle recovery, muscle soreness, giving my body what it needed to rebuild. This is something that I struggled with for the first decade of my training career. I literally thought that as I was doing push-ups, I was getting stronger and stronger. And with every push-up that I did, the muscle was building. I thought recovery was wasted time that could be spent training harder. And then I wondered, why am I always injured? Why am I always sore? Why am I always super tired? Well, once we start to put as much importance on the recovery as the actual training, this is when you will feel the change. That is when the light bulb will light up and you're going to realize that your body is this beautiful adaptation machine. And this can be applied not just to resistance training and working out, but to every aspect of your life. Apply small stressors to your life. Make yourself uncomfortable and challenge your everyday tasks and movement. Send a signal to the body and the mind that something needs to be stronger, that growth is needed here. And then here's the important part. You got to let your body rebound from that stress. Let your body recover from that stress. And right before you drop back to baseline, meaning that there's a sweet spot here. Think about it. 2 days of recovery is different than 2 years of recovery. Right before you drop back to baseline, and only you can know where that sweet spot is. You got to do it through trial and error and through experiences and failures. Then this is the time to create another small stress, which will repeat the process and contribute towards that slow, gradual, continual staircase of progress, of making yourself just a little bit better every single day. Now, it's not going to be a linear line straight up to the right. There's going to be setbacks. It's going to be a nice up and down, ebb and flow, but that's part of the fun. Happy exploring, friends. Break to build. Be smart with your recovery. And listen to your body. Do what works best for you. All right, Dream Team, that's it for today. Please share with me any knowledge, thoughts, or questions you may have on today's topic. I'll make sure to answer and discuss on the next episode. You can ask your questions in the comments section or message me on any of the social media platforms. Also, I would be so thankful if you shared this episode with any of your friends or family that may be able to benefit from today's podcast. I would love it if you could do me a solid and screenshot this podcast and share it on your social media platforms and just write one takeaway, one aha moment that you got from this episode. This will help me know what's really valuable to you, and so I can keep the good information coming. And it also lets your network know if this podcast is worth a listen to them. Thank you so much for listening and learning here with us on the Living the Dream podcast. We are so grateful for you being a part of this lifelong learning journey. If you have any topics you'd like to discuss, please let us know in the comments or by messaging me on Instagram at CoachDamien_SD. Be kind to someone today, smile at someone today, and leave every person you come into contact with better than before. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.